Okay, so picture this. You just get home, you go or decide you need to do some laundry. So you grab the laundry, you come downstairs, you walk around and get into the laundry room and oh no, what's happened? Well, you've got water damage on your floor. You've got lifting, you've got puckering, and nothing quite seems to fit anymore. Not a good day. So, let's see what we can do about that. Now the first thing you need to do is you actually need to inspect to find out how much of the floor is actually damaged. Now, from looking around, I could tell that from the floor from just about this joint here on has problems, and it goes from the wall all the way over to just a little the other side of this platform. So the flooring on this side is good. The flooring in the closet is also good. So we've identified the area that's the problem. Now we can start looking at what we want to do to fix it. Now we've got a few options. One, if you have more of the existing floor that you put down, you can just replace it with that. But you don't want to just do it straight away. You want to find out what the cause is. In this case, I don't have any more of this floor, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing this with a different type of floor. Now, I haven't picked it up yet because I want to determine what the cause of the problem is. And that's going to determine what I'm going to be replacing it with. Because if I go with another wood type material or a paper type material like this was, it's laminate, I'm just going to have the same problem if I don't figure out where the water's coming from. So what I'm probably going to do is going to go with a vinyl tile. But again, I need to figure out the source of the problem first so it doesn't get worse. Now the first thing you want to do is decide if there's anything you want to save. So in my case, I want to save all the wood that's in this closet. One, because I don't want to take everything out, and two, because it's still really good material. So I'm going to take a piece of wood with a straight edge, draw a line across, and that'll give me a line to follow when I'm making a cut to trim everything off. Now after the line's made, you can come through with a saw to trim everything off. I'm going to use a Dremel with a wood cutting bit and a shop vac to suck up any of the dust that I'm going to be making. That way I don't have to worry about cleaning everything in the room up afterwards. Now this will take a little bit of time, but it'll be well worth it afterwards. Now I've got the line cut all the way across, so I'm good to start pulling up the rest of the floor. Now I'm going to start up against the wall because that's where I laid it down first. Just pulling up one piece at a time. If you have anything in your way, such as a rinse tub, you can remove it, or if you have enough room to play, you can just leave it in place because the floor was already damaged. I'm going to leave it, but generally you want to have everything moved out of the way as you possibly can. Alright, so I've got the flooring mostly pulled up, got a few boards left that I haven't taken up yet, all that are underneath the washing machine here. And the reason why I haven't pulled those ones up yet is because I haven't found any water. The last row that I picked out, only half of it was wet, and there doesn't seem to be any more puckering or lifting of any of the other boards, so hopefully I shouldn't have to pull any more out. Alright, I've got everything moved out of the way now so I can see exactly where all the floor is wet. Now, from what I can tell so far, where I'm standing is currently dry. I've done a little bit of drying with the towel, but it seems to be damp starting over along here. Not necessarily all the way to the edge, just somewhere over there. And it's wet all the way over and around the floor drain, which had we had water coming in, I would have expected. But since so far we haven't had any water coming in, we haven't had any floods. It's the winter, so everything outside is frozen, so there's no water coming in through the window or through the wall. So it might be condensation, the water water seeping up through the foundation, but I'm sure somebody's gonna have an idea. You can leave your thoughts in the comments, and let's see if we can work out what actually went wrong. Now, just full clarity with this whole project, it was in no way, shape, or form assisted, sponsored, or anything by Lowe's, Home Depot, or any of the local hardware stores. All the material I bought with my own money. I went and picked it out myself. All the tools are my own. I've had many of them for many years, but just wanted to make sure that everything was clear. I didn't have any help with this. However, Lowe's, Home Depot in the future, I do have other projects I need to work on. So if you want to work together and we'll do up a couple projects of some more home renovations, I'd be more than willing to help out. Alright, so for the sake of discussion, I've got 3 different types of flooring here. Now, to start off, going from your right to left, we have your typical laminate flooring. So you've got your nice wood look on the top, you've got your tongue, you've got your groove for how it all locks together, and it's nice and thick. So if your floor is a little uneven underneath, it's not going to be that big a deal. You're going to be able to carry most of that difference, and you're not going to notice it. The next one I have here is a vinyl tile. Now this one also has the tongue and the groove, so it all interlocks together, and if you make sure everything's nice and tight, you're not going to notice any of the joints. This one, however, is quite a bit thinner and a lot more flexible. So if you have any deformations underneath, or if you got a bit of a sag in the floor, you're really going to notice this. And if that sag happens to be on one of the joints, there's a very good chance that it's going to break. So to fix that, you want to make sure that everything's waterproof, because as we all know, paper tends to suck up quite a bit of water. You have your thicker vinyl tile. Now this one is 7 millimeters thick, so it's going to carry quite a bit of load. It does still have some flex, but because it's so thick, you're really not going to notice it. You have your tongue, you have your groove for how it all joins together. So for argument's sake, let's take a closer look at them to see which ones might be a little better for our situation. Alright, so what we're going to start off looking at first is some vinyl plank laminate. Now this is 7 mil thick vinyl. Now as you can see, we have this nice groove on the bottom. This is the tongue. And then if we go around to the other side, this is the groove to show you where it sits in. Now you've got the little notch right here where the plank comes down and locks in. And I'll actually show you that with another one. So to set it in, you have to tip it up, slide it into the groove, just like so, and then it slides down. Okay, come on, focus. You can do it. There we go. So, yeah, it just rolls right in and then lays flat. That's how most flooring clicks together. Now, with this one, that's how you have the connection down the length of the plank. Now, if you go to the end on how it clicks from one to the next, this one, there's no little joint, there's no little notch for it to stick in. So this one, literally, once you put it in, you just push it down, and then roll it down, and then you just push to make sure that it clicks in with the next one. And for this, that's all there is for installing this type of flooring. Nice and simple. Now for this one, it's also vinyl laminate, or plank laminate. As you can see, it's quite a bit wider than the last one, but it basically works in the same principles. So on this side, you've got the tongue, where we can get the focus to work right. Come on. Alright, sort of. So you got the tongue, you got the little groove, and you got the little notch on the edge here. So it works the same way. We got it backwards from the last one, but it slides down on an angle, and then you roll it in to lock it in place. It's pretty standard for almost every flooring. And then on this one, you've got the side groove. On this one, to match them together, you actually do have the little slot for the ends to groove together. So when you're putting these ones together, both sideways and on end, you have to make sure they match up. Otherwise, you're going to have gaps. And when you're dealing with flooring, you really don't want gaps. It doesn't look too good. So with these ones, when you're laying them down, before you put the row in lengthwise, you have to get all your pieces lined up and connected first, so you can put them all in at once. Little more work depending on how far run you're going to be doing. You might need 2 people, but these ones tend to stay locked together quite a bit better. Again, a little more work to put in, but odds are they're gonna last you quite a bit longer. Now the third one I have here is a piece of typical laminate flooring. So you've got your really nice veneer, really nice look to it. The top is more of a plastic finish. It's not actually wood on top, but the rest all the way through is basically just layers and layers of paper. And then on the bottom, same thing. It's sort of the plastic or plasticky wood look. I'm not 100% sure what it's made out of, but everything the rest of the way through is basically just fiberboard. So it's all paper and wood bits. So this one goes together really nice. It looks good. It feels a little bit warmer to walk on, but it's really susceptible to water, whereas the vinyl is not. Now this one, again, you've got your groove and you've got your tongue for everything to lock in from one piece to the next. So again, the angle, come down into the groove, locks it in. And on this one, you also have the tongue on the side. So you have to do the same thing on your length you're going down the length of your run, where you have to lock each piece in one at a time before you can put the whole run in. So again, just like the thinner vinyl tiles that I showed, this one you may need 2 people to do. This one's a little more rigid than the last one because it's thicker, so you can sometimes get away with using 1 person, but if you have help, go with 2. It's going to be that much better to work with. Alright, so the floor we're going to put in, out of all these 3 options, is going to be this one for the laundry room. It's vinyl tile, so it doesn't have to worry about sucking up water, which is good because this is the one that we had in there right now, and it sucked up water. So this one, not a good choice. Skip this altogether. This one I put in my back entryway. Get lots of water coming in from the dogs, lots of mud. This one holds up really well, but it's pretty thin, and the floor does slope down to a drain. So I want to make sure that when we're walking on it, it's not going up and down and putting extra stress on the joints. So this one I'm going to skip and go with the thicker one. It locks together really well. I like the look of it. It sort of has, once it's all put together, it has a tile and grout look, which is going to be nice for the laundry room. Now, let's go get working on putting it in. Alright, back from the store. Now, start working in here. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take care of that ring, because the way the linoleum's sitting at, it's lifting up, and that's not good, and it's also not sealed. So let's trim it back. Now, since this is open right now, feeling around here, this feels damp. Concrete, but and the plaster that was used to fill it in. Damp, but not wet. So that's a good sign. Now, open this up. Take a look at what we have for drain. Got a backflow prevention valve in here. So if anything wants to, or if any water collects in on the floor, it's going to go down. But this is also float, so any pressure that comes back, it's going to lift up, close off, and nothing's actually going to come up. Still working perfect. So we'll cover it back up, and we'll move on to the next step. As you can see, the floor looks quite a bit different. I decided to pull up a bunch of the linoleum to try and figure out where it was wet on the floor. The only area that was actually wet was right in around the drain. There's a little damp up in here, and as you can see, there's some black mold in there, so we sprayed that with mold killer, because there wasn't a whole lot, just a little bit. But everywhere else was basically dry, so thumbs up. We don't have any real leaks in the floor. This is just wet around the drain because that's the low point. That's where the water is always going to go. So now that we've confirmed that we don't have any water anywhere else underneath the floor, we spray the mold killer. We cover the entire floor with it. We're going to let it dry overnight. We're going to come back, and then we're going to start putting the underlay down and put the rest of the flooring on top. Seal her up.
Day 2.
Alright, so welcome to day 2 of the floor replacement project. As you can see, I've mostly got the underlay back down on the floor. I can't get it quite everywhere because I still have a whole bunch of stuff in the way that I actually can't move. So ideally you want to have everything out of the room to give you as much working space as possible. Unfortunately at the moment I don't have that, so I'm doing the best I can. Now, when you're laying down the floor, the first thing you want to do is figure out what direction you want to start with. Now the best way to do it is you run the longest length that you can, because that'll give you the nice straight line to work off of, and you want to start on an edge. So for today and for this one, I'm going to be starting along this wall, which is going to give me all across the bottom, and then I'm just going to have to work my way backwards a little bit to get across here. Now, it's not ideal, it's not exactly what I want to be doing, but it's really the only way that I can make it work, because when I put the flooring in originally, I started off from the hallway and started working my way back out, or back in here. So let's get started with the flooring. So once you're ready to start laying down the floor, you want to make sure you're laying it down along a straight line. In this case, I should have drawn a straight line at the beginning and along the floor, so I had a reference to go through, but I didn't. But I'm using a wall instead, so that works just about as well, as long as I make sure to keep it tight. So it's just a matter of laying down the pieces, putting them down one at a time. Once you get to the short end, you measure, you have to cut. Once it's all cut, you can come back, put it in, and continue on with the next row. You want to make sure that this cut is done accurately, otherwise you're going to end up wasting pieces, because most of the time, just as luck would have it, once you cut a piece, it never works anywhere else. So the rule measure twice, cut once is really good. In this case, feel free to measure as many times as you want, as long as you're confident that you're going to get it right the first time, so you don't have to come back and do it again. Now once you got the piece installed, you can continue on with the next row. Make sure as you're putting them down, you stagger your joints, because if you have all your joints lined up together, you're going to have weak spots and the floor is more likely to break. Now as you're going through, odds are you're probably going to run into something you have to cut around. In this case, I have to cut around the floor drain. I just trace out the outline of the floor drain, make it a little bigger, cut it out. In this case, I'm using a coping saw because it gives me a lot of flexibility. And then you just continue on laying down the rest of the floor. Alright, now once all the flooring is in, you've all clicked it together, made all the cuts, done your fancy little cuts over along the edges here. Because you always end up with just a little piece that you've got to try and fill in, just a filler strip. So you'll have to rip that just like the other ones. But once that's in, then you can start going ahead and putting your baseboards back in. Now if you didn't number them when you took them out so you knew what order to put them back in, rest assured it's not that bad. All you have to do is go one piece at a time to see which wall it fits on. And just set them in place until you have them all laid out and they all fit. You don't have any extra ones? Perfect. If you have extra ones, then we got other problems. But if they all fit where you put them, then you can go ahead and start nailing them in. Now when you go to start installing the baseboards and the door trim, you want to make sure you start with the door trim, because once that's set in place, you'll be able to work your way out around away from the door frame, and all the pieces are going to line up, and you're not going to get caught with a gap at the end. There's nothing worse than ending up with a gap at the end of your trim. You're going to have to start pulling out a whole bunch of other pieces. Now you want to make sure you put a whole bunch of nails in here. When you're working along the floor, make sure you push down on the baseboard to give it a bow to make sure it's all nice and tight along the flooring. And once that's all done, your floor is basically complete. Now the only thing that has been missing on this one is I have not put in the thresholds to transition from one type of flooring to the other. And the reason for that is because I didn't get them when I picked up the flooring. So those are the only two things that are left to be installed. Otherwise, this project is complete. And there you have it. That's how you put it in laminate floor. Nothing really too difficult. Just takes a little bit of time, patience. Make sure you do it right the first time. But when you're getting your supplies, make sure that you check to find out on the material what you need to put it in. Some require an underlay, some require it to actually be glued down. All three that I had to choose from, the one that I ended up using in the end, were all floating floors, so they did not have to be glued down, but they did all require an underlay. So I used existing underlay for the new floor, worked out really well, but you always have to check to see what you need first. And when you buy it, always make sure that you buy at least one extra box if you're just doing a small area, just so if you do make mistakes in your cutting, you have enough to finish in the end. I've made that mistake before. It's really no fun, especially if you can't get the replacement wood to finish the job. So if you have a small job, one extra box, you should be okay. Otherwise, I know it's hard to suck up initially, but try and get 10% extra. So if you have 10 boxes, get one. If you have 20 boxes, get two. If you need 1,000 square feet, make sure you get an extra 100 square feet worth. So that might be an extra 4 or 5 boxes. Just to make sure that if you have any problems, you're not going to get caught short, because there's nothing worse than going through all that work to find out that you're 3 boards short, and then you either have to figure out what you're going to do to fix it, or end up having to redo the whole thing. So, hope that helps. If you have any questions about putting laminate flooring, hit me up in the comments. I'd be glad to help you. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next project.